Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. We continue on with our derivation. What is sensorality? What does sensorality stabilize? What is the natural definition of sensorality? So, some absolutely massive progress. My rights continue to be violated. To the people that continue to break the law, please pay me some money. Nothing would make my life more better. Nothing would improve my life more than being able to show my parents an absolute carnival bank account that I've rightfully earned. I don't give a single fuck about this mathematics. I want my money. I want my life to change. And so we have huge progress. I mean, every step is huge progress. There's a lot of steps, not complicated, just a lot of derivation. And so I'm going to take you through same pace, but we have we're almost done. I mean, we've got to be very close. And so again, we've kind of introduced this context of syllability, but in reality, you've already lived in a world where you have this fundamental unit of sound, the syllable, that is associated to meaning. And so we're doing a process of analysis to arrive at the natural definition of sensorality. And we prove that by reducing the syllability. This whole process from rhythm to algorithm is a reduction process. And so, moving along with our steps. Syllability is syllabic. So a natural definition, we have this fundamental stability of two, this opposition within linguistics, and words are naturally defined, and we show, quote unquote, the prime syllables, but how these words, how this syllability differentiates into different definitions. I have a notebook, I have a sweatshirt, a light, so on and so forth. Different objects, different things have different words. And so sensorality is syllabilicality. Sensorality is abilicality. Ability, abilicality. We can restate the fundamental theorem of mathematics. Sets are finite. Right? If something is set, if it is fixed, if it cannot change, it is finite. Definition, the literal structure of that word, is a form of finite. Sets are finite, definitions are finite. Finite is fixed. A word is a set of syllability, right? It's a fixed chunk of sound associated to meaning. A fix is a solution. Sensorality is dispensorality, and that has the ER in there. The opposite of a dispenser is a condenser. That was a big step when I went on a walk. It's definitely not even close to the bigger ones. But when I had that step, dispenser to condenser, something about, again, the D to the P is this fundamental geometric identity. But it felt like there was some sort of completeness within that prefix from dis to con. And then penser and denser being, there's the geometric rotation, but effectively the same thing. Worth pointing out, moving along. Sensorality is condenserality. That is a natural definition. Sensor, center, denser, condenser. So remember, we pointed that out, the direct iteration from sensorality with a C, a linguistic step that you can't really appreciate, or maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it contracts to it is what it is. So that proved the spelling. That was hundreds of steps ago or videos ago. But we produce this iteration denser, and right, we have condensing, condenser. Well-defined thing that has a natural definition. Sensation is condensation. That is a natural definition. Sensorality condenses. Condensing senses. Sensorality senses. Sensing feels. Sensing feels it. Siento lo siento. Right? I feel it. It I feel. Doesn't mean sorry, just means I feel it in the same way you would say, yo bro, I feel it. Siento tiempo. Dichotomy is binary. Sensorality is binarity. This binarity, this dichotomy, is this fundamental differentiation, right? Everything contains this component of two. And we're finding this natural definition of sensorality. But gravity, viscosity, right? What people say is gravity, they conceptually mean viscosity, right? Velocity, viscosity are inverses. Velocity, movement, viscosity, resistance to movement. Mass is resistance. Mass produces viscosity. Is the fundamental stability of two a maximum or a minimum? Again, this relationship of functionality, this relationship of base and range, we're finding some sort of completeness within linguistics, but that mathematically, that is still at the forefront of my mind. Is a base a maximum or a minimum? Is range a basis? Viscosity produces stasis. Sensorality is stasiality. This is a fun one. Asia, Asia, ace, Asia. It's a natural definition. Always, again, you can see it, but again, the A and the A being like some sort of symmetry, the C being in the middle, sound E. All right, why is it pronounced Asia? Every time I see that word, I see Asia. Syllability labels. Label is a geometric identity. Right? We have easy, ease, this fundamental inversion of E and A, but then label, right, starts with an L, ends with an L, B at the center. There was another one, I think it comes back up here in a second. Censoring is labeling. Sensorality is abling. Sensorality is enabling. Sensorality is enablability. Kind of a meaningless linguistic construction. It'll be on your screen, but just trying to generalize. Enabling, showing you some progression. The conceptualization, the conceptual progress was meaningful. The linguistic representation, intermediary steps. Sensorality is emblematicality. Labeling differentiates. And again, the word label carries conceptualization, but it is a fundamental geometric identity. We'll come back to that shortly. She and sheality is differentiality, pairing up that sheality phonetically to the T-I-C-I. Sensorality is differentiality. Is differentiation difficult? Does currency wave? Does currency flow? Does flowing wave? Does waving flow? Integration weaves, right? And intrication is weaving. Is integration algorithmic? What is integration to migration? Again, if something's very intricate, if you weave a web, I know we get to that one here shortly, but it stabilizes things. All of these little spin fiber bundles, right? They collectively combine. You take a bunch of phone books, put one sheet after the other, the maximum surface area. You take a bunch of strings, a bunch of fibers, right? The phrasing, with every fiber in my body, right? And then conversely, the phrasing, I will eviscerate you, I will shred you to every fiber of your body. Again, teasing, weaving. What is integration to migration? Condensation is essential. Taking that condenser, condensation, putting it to another recent renormalization. Sensorality is essential. Condensation is essential. Concentrate, condensate. Sensorality is mad. Sensorality is sad. Sad, said. Emphasizing again, we don't have negative connotation. Hostility, malice, evil doesn't really exist. You have perversion of privilege and corruption and power, but true evil is not well defined. It's not a thing. But we have words for negative emotions or not positive emotional states, mad and sad. Worth pointing out, moving along. Is a precipitate a condensate? What is condensation to precipitation? Sensorality is incipient. Incipient is nascent. Emphasizing the structure of nascent is scent with an N-A. Scent, nascent. Sensorality is nascentality. But the base of both of those words, nascent and scent, or I guess just nascent, is ascent. Ascending, ascent. Sensorality is a, add a space, scent. What is orality to scent? Is nasal nascent? Scent is nasality. What is orality to nasality? Sensorality is nasality. All right, just nasality, then putting kind of like putting sensorality, but nasality. Just trying to stuff in nasal where oral is. Sensorality is sen-nasality. Oral, nasal. So now conceptually, like we've shown differentiation from your mouth to your nose, linguistically, but directly by anatomically and geometrically. What is weaving to teasing? Teasing being our most recent renormalization of sensorality, or one of the recent ones. Again, this stuff cycles pretty quick. Sensorality weaves a web, right? Connecting that concept of intrication, a bunch of small things kind of twisting and contorting and torsion here shortly. But, right, if somebody says they weave a web, typically kind of like, right, he weave a web of lies, but and it's hard to follow. It's kind of like the presentation, but sensorality weaves, connecting it to a cliche, weaves a web. A web is a net, and that is a natural definition. So now the big result in almost a complete reduction. We are got to be very, very close. So again, I emphasize, pay me some money. Not paying me money has destroyed my relationship with my parents, which is where I currently live. Nothing would make me in my life better than to be able to show them a big bank account that I rightfully fucking earned. So the fundamental theorem, how fitting, is legality, right? We just had, so even to the structure of legality, before we get to it, label, right? This is this fundamental geometric identity, and then we iterate that to legal. And so label and legal flips the E and the A. The L stays the same, which is like parallel lines geometrically, and then G is right smack dab in the middle. So the fundamental theorem of legality, sensorality is tortality, right? And that is a natural definition, and it's a minimalistic natural definition. The only difference between orality and tortality is the T. So I said this T has this fundamental functionality of stability. Stability. Tortality is a natural definition of orality. It's just orality iterated by T, twice, 2 letters. Sensorality is legality. Legal, label. Tort, torsion. Torsion, tension. Right? So tension is this, you flip the S and the T and you get sension. That's a form of sensorality. But now you have this inversion within the linguistics of torsion and tension, right? Tension twists, torsion twists. Again, worth pointing out the inversion within that linguistic structure. What is torsion to tension? Torsion definitely twists. Tension, again, is it some sort of rotation or geometric difference here? All right, what is the geometric manifestation of inversion, linguistically or just totally? Torsion twists, torsion torus. Sensorality is a torus, directly from mathematical ontology, that thing. Tortality is the opposite of extortionality. Natural definition, we pointed out that pair recently, but again, tort, extort, retort. They're all, right, orality retorts. They're all forms of this legally defined thing of you have the right, we'll get here in a second. Is tourism extortion? Again, the logic doesn't matter, it's just the syllability presented, right? We're generating this self-contained question to exhaust the syllability of sensorality. Sensorality extorts. Sensorality is extortality. Natural definition. Sensorability is tortability. And again, we have sensoriality, again, the R-E-A-L-I-T-Y spelling, or just the R-A-L-I-T-Y spelling I use interchangeably. The conceptualization, again, the linguistics works out trivially. But emphasizing every bit of insight I have throughout this entire derivation process, because this will never be done again. Because there's absolutely no point for me to write it down again, and there's no point for me even to present it again. There's no new results besides like the finality of it. But tortability, torta, tortilla. Right? Again, just pointing stuff out. It pops up in the derivation, preserving the overall syllability, Because, right, tortilla, right, if you had tortilla-ality, you would still produce orality completely, like in order. Lawsuit ability is tort ability, right? What is liability? Lawsuit ability, tort ability. We have a complete legally defined thing, and the word legal is a geometric identity. What is syllability to tortability? Libel, label, slander, right? Libel, label, legal. Syllable, suitable. Syllability is suitability. Tortality, totality, emphasizing the reduction. If we were now removed, sensorality is tortality, directly, naturally defined legally. Then we remove the R, sensorality is everything. Totality is everything. And that is a natural definition. So now we're in this reduction conceptually. And so a bunch of big steps. Yeah, and like I said, the continuing restriction of my rights is profoundly and extensively disgusting. Just give me some money. I mean, like, there's nothing else that could possibly exist. The final reduction has to be imminent at this point. I keep saying I'm not going to say that, but we are out of words, and that is a complete, conceptually, we've completed this now, right? Legal is just a geometric identity. It has conceptualization, but we are at that irreducibility of syllability to assignment to shape. Give me some money. With that being said, see you on the next one.